We're very happy to be joined on the show by Layan Fuleihan, who is the education director at the People's Forum, also an editor at 1804 Books and an organizer with the Shut It Down for Palestine Coalition. Layan, thanks so much for being back with us.
It's great to be back on.
Well, it's great to have you with us. I mean, I guess there's so many places we could start here. I mean, we're essentially 1 year into the ongoing genocide. I guess maybe my first question, and this is kind of a broad question, so sorry about that ahead of time, but I mean, here we are 1 year later. One of the worst massacres of humans, I think, certainly many of us have ever seen, and I think will go down in history. But nonetheless, the Palestinian people have not run up the white flag of surrender in Gaza. And I just wonder your reflections on that, because I have to say it's really amazing to see that despite this huge amount of violence Israel has directed towards Gaza and also the West Bank, of course, Palestinians have remained steadfast.
Absolutely. I mean, the steadfastness of the Palestinian people, of the Lebanese people, of people who are directly confronting the military arm of U.S. imperialism and its puppet states is just incredible, completely incredible. And I think it's the admiration for this, the appreciation for this, and the reality of what it means to be an everyday person living in Gaza right now, or living in Palestine, or living in Lebanon, is reflected in the commitment of the mass movement for Palestine that has continued mobilizing and continued organizing now a year later. If you paid attention this past weekend, even October 5 was incredible. I counted over 58 actions in North America on October 5. There was more on October 6, more on October 7, and that's just what I was able to count. No one person can even have a full view of what's going on across the world, and that's just North America. And that's now 1 year later. I mean, if we think back to mass movements throughout history, it's rare for them to be able to last this long and to also be able to continue growing. I mean, there's people at these mobilizations this past weekend who it's their first time going out to a protest. And so it speaks to the fact that the ongoing U.S. assault on the Palestinian people, whether it's being executed by the Israelis or not, the ongoing U.S. assault in particular is still reaching the U.S. population in a broader and broader way. There's more and more people who are changing their opinion and waking up to the reality of what the United States is doing to people across the world, and making connections also to the hardships that they face due to the U.S. capitalist system here inside the United States. So I think it's really incredible. I think that it is a reflection of the fact that people are ready to stand up against imperialism. People are ready to fight for a different world and are not going to accept the reality that we live in today.
Layan, that's so important to remember, but I also want to, because I think that this is an important issue to deal with, and that is a kind of level of defeatism that starts to take over when it's been a lengthy time period like this. I mean, some people might say, okay, that's great that the movement's still going, but it's been a year. The public polling shows that the population of the U.S. is against this genocide. There are even increasingly for an arms embargo in Israel. That's not reflected in our leadership. It seems like no matter what the UN says and does, whatever they accuse Israel of doing, which they're absolutely doing on video, there don't seem to be any consequences because of the cover Israel gets from the US. And now Israel is expanding its genocide into Lebanon, trying to start a war with Iran. The Israelis seem to some degree, it starts to feel like the Israelis are unstoppable. I don't think they're unstoppable, but I do see that sentiment taking hold in people. It's like we're in the streets and it hasn't changed. It only seems to be escalating. So how do you address that sentiment that it's been a year and this is still going on? Does it even matter for us to still be in the streets if it hasn't done anything so far?
I'm so glad you raised that, Rania, because this is the key question in front of us right now. And the way we answer that question determines everything. I mean, if we look at the situation a year later and we say nothing we do matters because the genocide is still continuing, I think we're missing a major part of the reality here, which is that the genocide is being carried out by the ruling classes of the United States and Israel. They respond to money. They respond to profit. They respond to the profit being made off of the brutal deaths and massacre and devastation of the Palestinian people, of the Lebanese people. This system that we're in right now has no interest in meeting the demands of the majority of their own population. And I think what we've managed to do in this year is actually wake the world up to that fact. I mean, the United States doesn't just fight wars and commit massacres and push its agenda forward just with a military arm. They invest just as much, if not more, in media disinformation, in propaganda, in ideological manufactured consent. I mean, the kind of status quo consent for the ongoing occupation and slower, I wouldn't say slow, but slower ethnic cleansing and genocide of the Palestinian people up until last year was very effective. I mean, most people in the United States didn't even know what was going on in Palestine, let alone have a strong opinion about it. What we've managed to do this year, and I say we in the broadest sense possible, I mean, it's really just everyday people in their millions at this point who have all contributed to reversing this manufactured consent for U.S. imperialist agenda in the Middle East region. And what they've done is taken the mask off of the situation. A lot of people are realizing now, we've been protesting every day for a year. We've been to DC multiple times in hundreds of thousands. We have been writing letters. We have been doing disruptive actions. We have been organizing in every sector of society. And still this government doesn't change their course. They're willing to sacrifice an entire presidential campaign to the political crisis that's been generated by this movement rather than change course. It really shows how the system is organized, and the way the system is organized to protect the profit of the very, very few and sacrifice not only the demands and the wishes of the population, but also the lives of thousands, hundreds of thousands, millions of people across the world. So this in and of itself is extremely important. And I think that's really important to raise to people when we say, well, nothing's changed. Actually, a lot has changed. There has been an irreversible change in public opinion and in public consciousness, not just on the matter of Palestine, but on who we are and what our role is in society. Our role isn't just to sit back and maybe vote every 4 years. Our role is to organize and start creating the conditions for an actual concrete change and transformation of our conditions. And the second thing that I would want to say is, we all feel some varying levels depending on who you are and how close or far or how much you are dealing with the situation, an incredible amount of loss and grief and horror. I mean, what is playing out in front of us is a nightmare. People are having trouble functioning, just having to witness this, let alone having to live it directly, especially if people have family in Lebanon or in Palestine or in Gaza. But at the same time, a year later, Israel has not won yet. The United States has not won yet. They have not achieved their goals. They keep trying to escape the trap that they have created for themselves by expanding the war, by creating consensus around new targets among the military and political establishments of the United States and Israel. And they're just going to continue expanding the trap they've created for themselves. This is another thing that is very important to say. We don't have the luxury of feeling defeated or feeling despair while our people back home are still fighting, still struggling, and still surviving. We just can't. I mean, staying home at this point serves nobody except the White House and the Netanyahu regime. I mean, it really doesn't help anyone, but we together, collectively, we are able to overcome the feeling of horror of how this has unfolded over the past year and continue organizing, because although we've made a huge transformation, there's a lot more we can go. There's a lot farther distance we can go, and it's going to take us continuously growing the movement, continuously organizing, and not resting before it's over.
No, I think those points are extraordinarily well taken. And one of the things over the past year, Layan, that I think is relevant last couple of minutes here is, people comparing it to Algeria. That was 7 years. Vietnam, that was 1954 to 1975. I was actually just reflecting the other day that, around the same time they hung Gabriel Prosser for Gabriel's Rebellion in Virginia, Nat Turner was actually born. He revolted 30 years after that, but it was 30 years after that slavery actually ended in the context of 180,000 black people taking up arms during the Civil War. So, I mean, it's an element of this. I think a year is a long time. And because we have this social media, which we've never had in the past, that is just mainlining this to us, it's hard to lose track of it. But, liberation struggles are protracted struggles. I mean, I'll just leave it there to give you the last word in the last couple of minutes.
That's absolutely right, Eugene. We have to put this in context. And we also need to be realistic about what is happening right now. The world's most advanced and powerful and wealthy militaries are all trained on the populations of Palestine and Lebanon who have been occupied and under siege and dealing with the effects of neocolonialism and direct colonialism. In the case of Palestine, the kind of brutal apartheid reality that people have been living under stalls people's ability to develop. I mean, people are resisting the world's greatest military powers with what they are able to develop under conditions of direct occupation. This is not insignificant. It's not going to be able to be won right away. I mean, we have to look at history to reinforce our own stamina for this, because it is going to be a long fight. Is it going to be the longest fight ever? No, because already so much has transformed over 1 year. But from a year ago until now, it's not just that the fight has continued, but also the entire world has shifted its eyes onto the Palestinian cause. Israel and the United States are more and more isolated. There's significant impacts on all fronts, including the geopolitical front and including the political front. So, things are changing rapidly, but we also have to be very serious about what's actually happening. This is asymmetrical warfare in its most extreme, and still the most amount of wealth and technological development in the world has not delivered a victory to the United States nor to Israel, and that is extremely important to remember. We can't forget that, and we have to hold on to that as we continue struggling in every front that we are in.
Absolutely. Well, among other things, you're an editor at 1804 Books. I think Trinity of Fundamentals, put out by 1804 Books from Wissam Rafidi, the former political prisoner in Palestine and ongoing struggler there, has a lot to tell us about steadfastness, struggle, and what we're going to need moving forward. Layan Fuleihan, as always, pleasure to have you here with us on the Freedom Side.
Always happy to be here. Thank you both.